Welcome to another episode of For the First Time in Forever, the show that tries to fill the gaps in all of our watch lists. Now today is a very special episode because, and this is something I want to get into a routine of, for the first Friday of every month, I want to have a guest on. We can talk about a couple of movies, some that we haven't seen before, and we can just treat this series a bit more like a relaxed, chilled out conversation. And earning the prestigious award of being my very first guest on this show is my good friend Dave Tome. Hey Dave, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm all good. You?
Yeah, not too bad. How's lockdown keeping you?
Oh, you know.
Yeah. That's pretty much the answer. It is. There's no answer.
Been watching a lot of things, a lot of shows,
Yeah?
a lot of movies, plenty of stuff. To keep myself busy.
What shows have you been catching up on?
I've been watching a lot of Doctor Who, just classic Doctor Who because of BritBox, and it's been mixed. But I've been enjoying it because love Doctor Who. What about you?
You know what? I watched for the very first time. I binged through The American Office.
Oh, okay.
And the shocking thing is that I've never seen the British one. So a lot of people were
Really?
like, "What? You've never seen the British one, and you went straight to the American one?" I mean, I thought it was brilliant. Like,
right. I personally prefer the British one because I love that really dry humour.
Yeah.
And I feel, but that's just me personally.
Right, so the way this works is both me and Dave, we've each taken a film that we think is very well known, very popular, a very highly regarded film that none of us have seen for the first time. I went first and I chose 12 Angry Men. Wait a second. I am going to be talking about spoilers for this film, so consider this your warning now.
All those voting guilty, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, that's 11 guilty. All those voting not guilty? 1. Right. 11 guilty, 1 not guilty. Well, now we know where we are.
Now, the premise for 12 Angry Men is rather simple. You've got 12 men on a jury. They are attending a murder case. And the film literally follows them debating over the conviction. 11 of them are pretty convinced that this kid is guilty, but one man, Henry Fonda, raises his hands for not guilty, and thus a debate ensues where, slowly but surely, all of them are gradually convinced into thinking that maybe this kid isn't as guilty as they first thought. One of the reasons I chose 12 Angry Men is that I know just how much you love this film, so for me, watching it, I was really good going into it. I was so worried. I was like, what if I don't like this film? Because I don't then want to do a video where you're just like really angry the entire time.
No, well, the thing is with 12 Angry Men is it's so excellent. Everything about it is, I would say, pitch perfect. It's one of my all-time favourites, and it could be, I would argue it's probably my all-time favourite film. The concept is so brilliantly executed, because it's that thing of like, it sounds boring on paper. Oh, it's just 12 men in a room talking for an hour and a half. But when you execute it with a script like this and direction by Sidney Lumet, who just kills it, it's so enthralling. It is one of the most enthralling and gripping films I've ever seen.
Well, I think for me, it was just that simple premise of 12 men in a room, and there's no fancy sort of action thrills, nothing too stylish. It's just dialogue and discussions between them, and yet, I mean, having only seen it the once, and I'm sure you can probably agree with this, but I just got the feeling that as I was watching it, and then by the end, I could officially say that I feel like it's one of the greatest screenplays ever written.
I would totally agree. I think what's also great about the film is the fact that we don't get, or for the majority of the film, we don't even know the characters' names. We don't know them. And we get their character just by their appearance, and it's brilliantly done. The suits they wear in the film really denote their kind of opinions, and it really denotes their character. Henry Fonda wears like the white suit, and it makes him look kind of like almost angelic at points, where it just...
It's the purity.
Yeah,
the purity of his character.
And then you see someone like juror number 10, I believe, who wears the all black suit, and he's like the older man who really doesn't like the kid because he's a slum kid. And I think that
he's the one that sort of is very prejudiced against the defendant. I think it is the fact that every character has their own individual, or is unique in their own individual way, and often when you get something like this that is such an ensemble piece, inevitably you get some characters that will just fade into the background. But here, every character serves their purpose. Every actor gets their moment in the spotlight, albeit some more than others.
Some more than others,
but
obviously.
They embody everything about their character so damn well.
And I think what's even more interesting is the fact that the characters that are the less characterized are evident that they don't want to be there. And I think that's so clever. That's a really clever way. Like number 12, where he just is so apathetic to the entire case. He goes on about how he works at an advertising agency for most of the film.
He's more focused upon himself than actually being in the jury.
Like number 7 as well, being just like, I got tickets to that ball game tonight.
He was a dick. I
hate him. I hate him so much. But he's so... But that's the point. And it shows that the film is well written because you have such a strong feeling towards every single character.
For a movie that, arguably, as you start the film, you are literally following the characters into the jury room. We aren't given any immediate context about the case other than it is a murder case. We don't know the ins and outs, any of the testimonies, but we're learning that as the discussion goes on. And I feel like that is such a natural way for this movie to play out, rather than forced exposition dumps from characters that are clearly... just trying to spoon feed the audience, whereas here, like I said, it's just so effortless and natural. Yeah, let's move on to the cinematography, because as a cinematography nerd, and I adore the way in which films are actually crafted, this was my bread and butter. I could have eaten up how Lumet uses the camera in this film.
Oh, it's excellent. It's so meticulous. It doesn't seem like it when it starts, but as the film progresses, you notice that the camera just slowly and slowly gets lower and lower, and it's just all the shots like become like this really claustrophobic, like heavy atmosphere, and it's lovely.
It is that sense of claustrophobia, because it isn't sort of almost... Because you feel the claustrophobia encroaching around the jurors, not necessarily... I didn't find it myself, but I felt it closing around, encircling around the juror members themselves. And there isn't anything sort of like in your face about the direction. It's not like highlighted in giant neon flashing lights of how like, oh, it's getting tense, because it's done so naturally and brilliantly understated.
It's so clever. And seeing Henry Fonda deconstruct every single bit of testimony is so fun to watch. When they're testing out what the old man's theory was about being able to walk to the staircase in his apartment, but clearly not being true, it's so satisfying to see the evidence just get torn to shreds.
You get a lot of those moments peppered in where all of a sudden you, as an audience member, are beginning to watch the case against the defendant crumble and fall to pieces. Because, at least for me, I don't know how it was when you were watching it for the first time, but for me at least... I went in, and when they're just beginning to discuss the case, I'm like, well, this kid seems guilty. Like, I don't know all the ins and outs, but this kid it's like, I think he did it. And then you, similar to the other juror members, are beginning to realise, wait a second, things aren't quite as they seem, and you end up shifting from, or at least I did, from the side with Lee J. Cobb and the other jurors onto Henry Fonda's side, and you're urging all the other jurors that are still trying to find him guilty, you're willing them to just come over to your side.
One really standout moment for me, it involves Juror 10 and Juror 11, where Juror 10 is the very prejudiced, kind of almost classist character. He doesn't like the kid because he was born and raised in a slum. And there's that one line where he says, "Oh, listen to him. He don't even speak good English." And then Juror 11 claps back with the amazing line,
yes.
"He doesn't even speak good English."
He's a common ignorant slob. He don't even speak good English.
He doesn't even speak good English.
But that reminds me of a scene where it's Henry Fonda and Lee J. Cobb, and Fonda is antagonizing juror number 3 to the point where he like runs at him and he's like screaming, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you," and they've already proven that. Yeah, like, do you mean that? And you're like, oh, Okay.
You don't really mean you'll kill me, do you?
I genuinely have nothing wrong with this film. I cannot think of an issue with it. I mean, if you have any issues, go for it.
It's tricky because you kind of think, and am I just nitpicking? Because you do when you watch a film that it has the status that 12 Angry Men has. Unfortunately, you do go into it thinking, well, I'm not necessarily looking for reasons as to why it's the greatest screenplay of all time. Unfortunately, you go in thinking, well, give me reasons why it isn't. And so I'm thinking, and I'm like, are there any nitpicks? And I think the only one I have, and this is such a major nitpick to the point where I don't really think it has any impact on the film itself, or at least not for me, is that I do find it very ever so slightly far-fetched that Henry Fonda, who by all accounts is an architect, or his character is an architect, suddenly turns into one of the world's greatest sleuths.
But it's not even that. It's not even a sleuth thing. It's more like you think about the evidence in a different way. It works like it's a mystery story.
Ultimately, for me, 12 Angry Men is a bona fide piece of cinematic history, because for those 97 minutes, no matter what you could be going through outside of the context of this film, for those 97 minutes, that room is the most important room on Earth. The brilliant array of characters that you have, the fact that Lumet didn't need millions and millions of dollars to make this film. It proves that all you really need to create a sheer and utter masterpiece is a good script, a good selection of actors, and a damn good vision behind the camera. So, after watching 12 Angry Men for the first time in forever, it is God tier. Anyway, those were our thoughts on 12 Angry Men, but now we move on to Dave's choice, and that is the 1974 crime noir thriller, Chinatown.
Hold it there, kitty cat. Hold it.
Hello, Claude. Where'd you get the midget?
You're a very nosy fellow, kitty cat, huh? You know what happens to nosy fellows? Huh? No? Wanna guess? Huh? No? Okay. They lose their noses.
In 1937 Los Angeles, private investigator Jake J.J. Giddies specializes in cheating spouse cases. His current target is Hollis Mulray, a high-profile chief engineer for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, whose wife suspects him of infidelity. Eventually, Giddies sees Mulray meeting with an unknown woman who isn't his wife. Once the news of this supposed affair between Mulray and this woman hits the media, additional information comes to light that makes Giddies believe that Mulray is being framed for something and that he himself is being set up. So as you can see, I think Chinatown is very, very similar to what we were saying about 12 Angry Men. I view it to be one of my favourite screenplays of all time. And so, Dave, going into this, what were kind of your expectations for Chinatown? And then eventually, did it meet those?
So, kind of when I went into it, I expected it to be like one of those screenplays where it's so tight and so, like, sharp. But it's not that.
Oh, no.
No,
oh no, Dave, why you gotta do this?
No. I liked the film, I did. However, Chinatown presents this really kind of lazy tone. I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's this very casual tone of the whole thing, where it's very much, it's very slow, it's very meticulous, but it's not in kind of the way of 12 Angry Men is. It's very much, we're doing things at our pace. There are aspects of it which I love. The screenplay, as you said, is fantastic. The dialogue is so good. It's so good. Jack Nicholson's performance is incredible. However, I would say that kind of a lot of the aspects of the film I didn't find that gripping. The basic plot of a water irrigation plot against the city of Los Angeles, I didn't find that to be that enthralling. For me personally, I know a lot of people love this film and find that fascinating. For me, it wasn't kind of that enthralling.
It's funny that you say that you didn't find the water and irrigation thing all that interesting, and For me, I feel, at least watching it again, for me it's one of those films where each and every time you watch it, you pick up on a new detail that almost shapes the way in which you see the film. And so for me, when I watched it the first time, I kind of get what you're going for, in that you're seeing this investigation take place about the water and the irrigation system, and you're kind of like, well, I don't really see the big hook about this. But for me, it was then that slow and eventual reveal that, similar to the investigation that Giddies is investigating, this movie isn't really that focused on the water and irrigation conspiracy. It's leading up to that eventual reveal of Faye Dunaway's character, of how she has been she's suffering at the hands of abuse from her really, really disgusting and slimy father, played by John Huston. And it's that ending, which we'll get onto in a bit, because I can talk for hours on end about that ending. So for me, it's almost like you're having the rug being pulled from you, but rather than it being a sudden tug, it's being slowly slipped under your feet to the point where you're not even noticing that it's being taken away from you.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those films which very much benefits from a repeat viewing. It almost, watching it for the first time reminded me of watching Vertigo for the first time.
You know, this is where we come to blows. I've never actually seen Vertigo.
Oh my god! Okay, that you need to watch that, because that film is excellent. But no, Vertigo. I'm not going to say too much about Vertigo, but Vertigo is one of those films which very much benefits from repeat viewings, because it's very similar in, like, you think it's about one thing, and then the more you watch it and the more you learn about it, the more it becomes evident that it's not that. And that's all I'll say on that.
So you mentioned earlier you were talking about Jack Nicholson, and I think, for me at least, aside from his performance in The Shining, this is actually one of my favourite Nicholson performances. Not only is he just, like, the charismatic leading man that I don't think gets enough spoken about. When people often have, like, who is one of the greatest Hollywood actors of all time, I find it a bit weird that Jack Nicholson isn't really in that conversation almost immediately.
I think it's one of those things where he's very much typecast into, like, people saw The Shining and like, we need this guy to play crazy guy, but I can do more than that. No, we want you to play the crazy guy, though. Because if you ever... I mean, I know a film you haven't seen is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I believe that was on your list of something you haven't seen. And
that is true.
That is another amazing film. But that's another Jack Nicholson performance where he's incredibly good, and where he's not being the insane person. He's just playing someone who's pretending to be insane, and it's really, really gripping. Jack Nicholson is so good in this film. He's so likable.
He's got that trademark cynicism about him, where he's coasting a very fine line between being a bit of a nosy prick, but then he has that conversation in the barbershop where he's adamantly trying to get people to understand that he's trying to make an honest living. I think as well, in terms of what I think Chinatown does with flipping the script on traditional noir thrillers, I think it can be perfectly presented with Faye Dunaway's character, because she traditionally in like noir films, you have the femme fatale, who is a female character that starts out as the love interest, and then as the story progresses you begin to realize she's actually the antagonist of the film. And Chinatown sets it out almost in a way too obvious way that maybe Faye Dunaway's character isn't all as she seems to be. But then you have that brilliant scene between her and Jack Nicholson where you're with Gitties, you're waiting for her motives to come true, and then you find out the really quite horrifying secret that
and she's
she
my
isn't.
sister. That's disgusting. It's so hard to watch.
She's my sister. She's my daughter. My sister, my daughter.
I said I want the truth.
I think the way this film is structured is very unique in terms of the way that it's not necessary. It feels like everything in the film feels like it's in Act 2. Everything in the film feels like it's an Act 2, and then the last 15 minutes it goes through the entire third act, and it is so good.
I feel like, because one of the best things that they do in terms of Gitties as a character is, like you said, we aren't told that much about him, and we just kind of learn bits and bobs sprinkled throughout. And I think one of the most important things that like it directly ties into what I consider to be one of my favorite endings in film, is this kind of presence of Chinatown, because we don't really enter Chinatown for the whole of the movie apart from that ending, but we get the hint that Chinatown has a very, very huge part to play in Giddey's life when he was a police officer, in that he tried to save someone from being hurt and he ended up causing it. And you see that then almost directly played out come the end, and it happens so quickly that it's really jarring to watch, but it kind of illustrates how Chinatown is just this almost sinful and disturbing place that within moments of entering it, the entire world can just be flipped upside down. And you see when Jake is being carried away, and you get the immortal line at the end where it's like, forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown.
Forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown.
Of where it's this helplessness situation that you can do, there is nothing you can do in this situation. You've done all you can, and it still wasn't good enough.
It's the cyclical nature of kind of Gittys' life, in that he thinks he earns an honest living to help people, but really it's very much like no matter what he does in his life, people are always going to get hurt. And I think that's a really interesting idea to it. Bringing it all back to the same location as well really works well. So overall, Chinatown it's a film that actually I've retroactively started to enjoy more the more I discuss it. It's really tight, it really knows what it's doing, and it's really, really good. It's really good with its kind of atmosphere, its tone. This feels like a very modernized 50s noir film, and it's so interesting, and the thrills and the dialogue is great. However, it does have some elements which I do not like, such as I think the film may be a little bit too slow paced. I think that there are some elements of it which are problematic, which I will not get into right now. But overall, this film is very good, and it's very much knows what it's doing.
So, Dave, after watching Chinatown for the first time in forever, what are you going to give it?
I will give it a worth it. Chinatown is a classic noir thriller that I think anyone who has a big interest in films should absolutely watch.
So those were Dave's thoughts on Chinatown, and that concludes this episode of For the First Time in Forever. Dave, I really want to thank you for coming on the show, man. This was kind of a work in progress. I had no idea how it was going to work having a guest on, but honestly, talking with you about these two films has been an absolute blast, man.
I agree. It's been very fun, and I'd love to do it again sometime. It's been also really fun just watching these films. Like, you know, you can't be a film buff without loving films. It's part of it.
Very, very true. So those were our thoughts on 12 Angry Men and Chinatown. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of those films. Have you seen them? If not, what are some other movies that are on your watch list that you are yet to get round to seeing? Anyway, next week I will be back with just myself. We'll be back to original format, and here is a little teaser of what you can expect. Thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please make sure that you click that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All the links to my social media accounts, my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and my letterbox are all in the description below. And if you haven't liked the video, what are you still doing here?